Want to watch football without the restrictions of blackouts or cable? Check out expressvpn.com to help you get access to all the live games. Sign up today using the link in the description to get 3 free months.
Go to Bolt fam, it's the director. Chargers fans, everybody chill for a second, okay? I understand the Chargers lost their game versus the Rams this last weekend. Bummer, right? But it's preseason. That's what these games are for, so that we can figure out what's going on with the roster, take the good, try and build on it, take the bad, try to fix it. And this game, I will say, had a good mix of both, right? Sure, there's going to be things the Chargers, you got to figure things out in terms of, especially backup quarterback, which we're going to talk about again this week. There are some things maybe on defense that could take a look at. The offense has some pacing issues, but for the most part, I have to say this, man. This game was way better than last week versus the Seahawks. I think the offense looked like they showed signs of life. We're starting to see the vision behind Greg Roman and some of the working pieces there. Some of the receivers did step up. The blocking looked really good, which we're definitely going to touch on today. But ultimately, I would say that the culture and everything that Jim Harbaugh is building really is starting to come to the surface, and it's going to take more time. It's certainly going to take more than just evaluating preseason games to understand and witness that. But you know what? We're working our way closer. Next week, we play the Cowboys. I do expect to see more improvement there as the Chargers may roll out with even more starters, but it should be very interesting. Now, before we do jump in, actually, and shout out the sponsor and all that, I do want to give you guys one more piece of advice here as we're getting to the last preseason game for the Chargers before the regular season. I have to highly recommend you guys check out the sponsor, ExpressVPN, and the video I put together to help people get access to the games this season without having to go like the $1,000 route with, Sunday ticket, YouTube TV, all that kind of stuff. I get asked this all the time. How are we watching the games? That's how I'm watching the games every Sunday. So if you guys want to check that out and get your feet wet, or at least figure out how to do it and test out the method in that video, the last preseason game is probably a good way to go about that. Now, before we do kick things off, shout out to the other sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. Use code DIRECTOR to match your first deposit up to $250. Newcomers, take advantage of the special on screen and keep your eyes peeled, especially crew members. We're going to have another Underdog Fantasy Best Ball Draft on Wednesday. If you guys want to be part of that, I think I will be live streaming that for those who are interested. Before we do kick off, hit us up with a like and sub if you do enjoy this Chargers content. The small amount of time you guys take to the like, sub, and bell notification helps me out a lot. Let's get into it. Lights, camera,
action!
Who's got it better than us?
Into the end zone, Charger fans are witnesses to history!
Your Chargers versus Rams post-game report. We're going to call them recaps. I don't know. I've been thinking about changing things up a little bit so it's not so, repetitive in terms of the weekly content. But hey, we're here to talk about the Rams recap. And probably the first thing everybody's going to be asking about again, and we'll jump right into the first topic because the intro is a little bit long. Everybody wants to know my thoughts on Easton Stick again. And of course, I think you guys can all speculate as to what I'm about to say. Easton Stick. What did I name this segment? Okay, I said once again, Easton sticks it where the sun don't shine. Yeah, it's not great. It's not great out here. QB2 is a problem. Okay, I'm not going to say it's the biggest problem in the world for the real-life regular season Chargers. Of course, if something, again, God forbid, knock on wood, all the things, right, were it to happen where we would need our quarterback to, things would already look pretty grim as it is. Because our franchise quarterback really is one of the pivotal pieces of this team that keeps the offense running, that keeps the team in contention every single season. And like we saw last season with Easton Stick stepping up in the absence of Justin Herbert, it really falls apart when Herbert isn't a part of the equation. It really falls apart when his influence and his talent isn't leading the offense. And to that, point, you could throw in almost anybody, any option, and say they will be a disappointment next to Justin Herbert, right? It's tough. It's a tough and tall task for QB2. But the Chargers in particular, I have to say, are in a more of a bind than almost all the other teams in the NFL in terms of backup. And that's because Easton Stick is performing, I think the stats actually came out this morning. Easton Stick, statistically the worst quarterback to perform in the preseason so far, which is obviously pretty dang bad. There's 32 teams out there with 32 starting quarterbacks, and behind them, guys that are fighting for the backup spot. And out of all those guys, and again, don't put all these words as factual or whatever. Like I'm paraphrasing here a little bit. I'm hoping that we're correct on that. But as far as I was reading, out of all those quarterbacks, Easton Stick is struggling the most. And that is something that is a little bit concerning to me because, again, we don't want to ever be put into a situation where we need QB2, but we need a better quality of QB2 for other reasons, just backing up Justin Herbert. We need somebody out there, in practice throwing quality reps, giving quality, iron sharpens iron sort of concepts to the backups, right? To the second string team. And we need a guy that we feel a little bit more confident in. If something were to go down where we do need QB2 for a drive or two or a game, right? I don't want to feel like if we're contenders this year and Justin has to sit out a week or two, that those games are automatic L's. And right now it kind of feels that way with Easton Stick. And again, I love Easton the person. He comes off as a really good guy, but we're trying to build a contender here. And a lot of contenders do have capable backup quarterbacks. There's going to be options. I think the Chargers are taking the approach a bit similar to how they've done in the past and maybe how Joe Ortiz likes to do things now. We may be waiting for the first wave of cuts to really hit, right? The first wave of real cuts probably is coming up this week. Maybe next week at the very latest, where some of the real hard nose, or the real hard decision, cuts will free up, more spots in every NFL team's roster. And a lot of those are going to be quarterback. The Chargers, just before recording this video, released one of our backups in Max Duggan. He's gone. We got now Easton Stick, Luis Perez in the quarterback to battle. And maybe we see another one enter the fold here soon because another team decides to part ways with a more capable backup than Easton Stick. So I'm going to guess that's probably what's going on. There is a case to be made that the Chargers will just roll with Easton Stick. That, again, we're kind of screwed either way if Easton has to start. But I believe that Jim Harbaugh and Joe Ortiz and this new team may find a way to help strengthen every backup, no matter the position, especially at quarterback, where you would think, it's not worth the money, this and that. Well, it could be. And with the worst quarterback in the preseason, I have to believe that we need to do something at this point. Now, behind him, as we mentioned, in contention for QB2 is going to be Luis Perez, which, I'll be honest, man, he stepped onto the field in the second half. He threw one pass, and I was like, hallelujah, we're saved. And it was the same thing that we felt last week. Luis Perez stepped out there. He threw like a 30-yard pass. This week he did the same thing. It was like a 20-yard pass. It was awesome. Luis Perez at times looks like the real deal. But if I'm being completely transparent with you guys, if I'm being truthful in my overarching, or overall opinion on QB2 and the battle going on here, Perez outpaces but doesn't outshine Easton Stick at this point for me. I still think that the Chargers could use some more talent in terms of backup quarterback competing for QB2. And that's just a fancy way of saying that I don't know if I have the confidence in either one of these guys right now. Perez could still work out. We have very little to look at him right now, right? What we have seen at times has instilled a bit of confidence, but it hasn't been consistent enough for me to go ahead and plant my flag and say, hey, Luis Perez, QB2. I'm still of the opinion that we probably need a little bit more talent back there to help push these guys, because like Jim Harbaugh himself said a few weeks ago, he wants the quarterbacks to step up and challenge Easton Stick because he didn't feel that way before, and I have to imagine he probably doesn't feel that way now. As a matter of fact, even for a preseason game, I do recall Jim Harbaugh being a little bit upset on the sideline after the game, and even at Easton Stick at one point for something I didn't think he did, but maybe he messed up something at the line. I don't know. It feels like it is an issue. The team knows it. Harbaugh knows it, and there needs to be a move at some point to help improve that backup job or that backup competition. Because right now I don't really feel the confidence there. Let's move on to something that's a little bit more encouraging for Chargers fans. There is some good to be taken from this game, though, despite the poor QB2 play. And one of the biggest things that happened this week is something I've been anticipating for a long time. It's a player that I've been excited to see since he was drafted by the Chargers. It's going to be Kimani Vidal. Vidal took it by storm this week, dudes. It was awesome. We've all been anticipating what his talent could mean on this team, and he is for real. He's one of the cogs in the engine that makes it work, at least the archetype of player that he is. He is for real. 49 yards and 11 carries is impressive, like 4.5 yards a carry. That's what we need back there, man. He also logged 2 catches for 8 yards. That versatility certainly important. But again, he looks as nasty as advertised. This is a guy that a lot of Chargers fans and beat writers and NFL heads were excited about when he landed with the Chargers in particular, because we were going to be a particular style of running an offense, and it's going to be a big part of our identity going forward. And we needed a guy with his exact same traits, man. Mean, physical, shifty at the line. He's got great burst. He's got great vision. He showed great vision. Vision is actually something that I was hoping that he would improve over the offseason. And based on the first preseason game that he's seen action, it looks like it's working. It looks like that part of his game is improving. He greatly resembles to me a lot of what Blake Corum offered Jim Harbaugh in Michigan. As far as like a pro comp, he reminds me a lot of Jaylen Warren of the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's got a lot of that nasty, shifty physicalness to his game that it just feels like it works. And a big reason why I feel like it works is the offense really took a step forward when he stepped foot on the field. It found its footing despite the quarterback play. This is a part of the identity of the Greg Roman offense that needs to be present in order for it to work, and that's the right kind of running back, right? The offensive line play is really important, and they did improve this week, which we will talk about. But this style of running, this kind of running back, especially when you talk about, the different flavors that we have all over the roster, a lot of them do carry that toughness factor. And in this case of Kimani Vidal, he's that compact, cannonball kind of running back, and it really did shine. It really did show why the running back position is so important to this offense. While he was on the field, the offense actually looked really good. And this is while Easton Stick was struggling and while Luis Perez wasn't, converting over and over again. It was tough to watch out there when Vidal wasn't on the field. But when he was, it did feel like there was some life out there. Kimani Vidal, man, shout out to him. I think we got ourselves a rock star there at some point. I do think he's a lock for RB4 at the very, late or lowest on the roster. I think RB3 is definitely in the cards for him too. Really impressed with what I saw from him this week, and I'm excited to see how he continues to progress, man. He looks awesome. And quickly, I don't know if I was able to find a photo of him. It might be him there on the right side, but shout out to number 44. No, not Ben Mason anymore, who was recently cut by the Chargers. New tight end Tucker Fisk, who was just signed from the Atlanta Falcons. This dude is a 6'4", like 260-pound tight end playing fullback for the Chargers, and that is something that's really working out from the get-go. I can almost guarantee you have a lot of plans for fullback. Tucker Fisk offers a lot of flexibility there. The Chargers have another lineman in Jordan McFadden who's also providing some flexibility at the fullback position, which is absolutely insane to me. And it is really evident to me that I form and those kinds of running formations where a fullback is featured is going to be something you see a lot in this offense. And seeing Jordan McFadden gets me excited. I think it's something that's going to work. He looks really good when running in at that position. But another guy that I'm feeling pretty good about is Tucker Fisk. There's no reason why we can't have both on this squad. Fisk was as good a blocker as you could ask for on Saturday, man. He was awesome. His size and power was on display. He was opening up lanes for Kimani Vidal pretty frequently, and it's something I had to throw out there in terms of the Chargers run game. He looked good. It's nice to see, a fullback out there again for the Chargers offense and watching it work. One thing to have one out there, another thing to see it work. And Tucker Fisk really did help Kimani Vidal shine in his first game this preseason. And shout out to Tucker Fisk, who as well, who's a very brand new addition to this team, showing up in his very first game. Exciting stuff there. But perhaps the most impressive blocker of the evening and the most impressive player on the Chargers offensive line was once again our rookie, Joe Alt. This dude's been absolutely awesome the past couple of weeks. Now, I'll say week 1, he stood out and he looked great. He looked good, man. And a lot of people were pointing out that despite that game's disappointing result, Joe Alt was really standing above everybody. Like, yeah, the Chargers, they got themselves a good one. Despite what we're seeing from, would-be, could-be, should-be picks like Malik Neighbors going off and Nate Wiggins going crazy, like, the Chargers got themselves an awesome tackle out here, and that was from what we saw last week. This week, it was even better, dude. He's already showing signs of being a top tackle in the league. He's a budding star at this point. And, of course, it's preseason. Let's not lose our heads yet, but it's something that's really hard not to notice as someone who has been following him since drafted by the Chargers, since, rookie mini camp through, training camp and now preseason. Like, he has been improving, it seems, every single day. And now the stats are starting to back it up. The biggest thing that fans need and Chargers fans are going to need in order to feel that confidence in our number 5 overall pick is consistency. And consistency is starting to snowball as he gets better every single week. And again, the numbers are starting to follow that up. He's got a 98.2 blocking efficiency rating in the preseason as a whole so far. That's among the best in the NFL right now. That is insane. For a rookie to come in week 1, day 1, and start putting up results like that is awesome. And honestly, the Chargers, if that continues, we have got ourselves a very good foundation for the team build going forward with having those bookends, as well as what we have on our plate early this regular season. We need that this regular season. Imagine, guys, if the Chargers were still going in with Trey Pipkins at right tackle, which, again, about average at right tackle. He's had his days. It probably, I don't know. I don't know how much my confidence would be if he were our starting right tackle this season, especially considering that the very first 3 games, Raiders, who we got? Max Crosby. Glad we got Joe Alt. Next game, Jadeveon Clowney. Carolina Panthers. Glad we got Joe Alt. The next game, week 3, Pittsburgh Steelers. TJ Watt. Super glad that we got Joe Alt on this team, man. Like, honestly, this is starting to work out a lot better than I thought it would in terms of, like, my initial reaction. My initial reaction to the pick was like, oh, thank God it wasn't J.C. Latham. Latham is turning out to be pretty good, too. But honestly, a lot of us wanted a skill position player. I'm really starting to see the vision every single week. Joe Alt goes out there and shows us why Coach Harbaugh has so much confidence in him and why he was such a highly touted prospect, among some of the best tackles we've seen in a draft class. It's awesome, and it's really cool to see it starting to pay off for the Chargers. So congratulations to Chargers fans. We got ourselves a good one in Joe Alt. He's really starting to put together a nice resume in preseason. Speaking of the offensive line, I don't know if you can quite see a bunch of guys here, but I wanted to point out a couple of them, right? Don't know who that is. It might be all, I don't know, but in front of him is Will Dissly, and the rest of the line out there giving Easton stick. As you can see, there's just one lineman on him. Everybody else has been pushed to the perimeter, which is awesome. The offensive line as a whole is doing pretty well. This week was a huge improvement over last week. Of course, the backup still did struggle a little bit in the second half, but a good combination of the starters, mainly I think Joe Alt and a couple other guys out there. Not even a bunch of stars. I do remember a bunch of them not even suiting up this week. But despite that, the Chargers did have a pretty good outing in terms of line play this week. And a guy that I did want to point out too, that I couldn't find a good photo of, but I did see him plenty of times in game, was Will Dissly, that you're going to see there on screen. There were several plays where Kamani Vidal doesn't hit that big run unless the edge is sealed up and Dissly is there. There's plenty of plays where Will Dissly is creating space on the outside for various reasons. It's awesome seeing that tight end position really get involved in the blocking this year. And Dissly, again, like we're saying with a couple of guys in the roster, he's everything is advertised. He's been great. In terms of a blocker, he did, I think, log a catch this week. He looks great as a receiver as well. But those blocking abilities, man, like that's going to really come into play for the Chargers this season. The offensive line play is going to be something refreshing for Chargers fans to witness, as it is going to be much improved over the Chargers' past decade or so. And there's going to be a lot of different looks out there in terms of Justin Herbert being able to do certain things because he's got extra time in the pocket, and et cetera, et cetera. Very exciting stuff out here, man. Shout out to the line and Will Dissly. Speaking of shout outs, man, take a look at this dude. Simi Foko. The Chargers' battle for wide receiver, what are we at this point? 4, 5, and 6 is starting to heat up a little bit. If you were to tell me what's going on with that position in training camp, I would have told you it's pretty much a lock for Brendan Rice, which I still feel very confident in. But if you're asking me who one of the biggest stars is at receiver in the preseason, it's definitely going to be Simi Foko. This guy has been on fire the past couple of weeks. This week in particular, man, he was awesome. He logged, over 50 yards, couple of huge plays in his direction. He's showing off that speed. He's showing off the special teams ability. Foko really is going to make it tough for the Chargers coaching staff to make decisions on backup wide receiver. It's crazy out here how good Foko has been in all facets of his game. And just needed to shout that out because, again, cuts are coming up. Chargers have guys on the roster that are going to be fighting for spots. Cornelius Johnson's going to have a hard time making the roster. Brendan Rice could certainly be, on the bubble a little bit now that Simi Foko is stepping up. But this isn't by no means a problem. Foko having his ability in terms of backup wide receiver, because he is fast, he is big, he's got big playability, kind of like a Mike Williams a little bit. And he's got that special teams upside as well. Like, if he ends up making the roster, it's for a lot of good reasons. And it just makes that whole dynamic and that whole backup wide receiver battle that much more interesting. So we'll keep an eye on him. Another wide receiver that did see a nice step this week, which is interesting because he did play, I would say, a good number of snaps. I saw him out there, I think, even until the fourth quarter, was Quinton Johnson. And some people are not going to like this, but I'm going to go ahead and say it, right? It's crazy that I'm about to pump up an incomplete pass, but here we go. There was a play on the sideline that I think it was Luis Perez that threw the ball. I don't remember. Quinton Johnson came up with an absolutely insane catch that wasn't a catch. Showing his ability to go up there. He jumped like 20 feet in the air. Used his hands. Came down with the ball. The defender did a really good job at pushing him out of bounds so he couldn't complete the catch with 2 feet in. But outside of that, every single thing Quinton Johnson did on that route, on that play, was a huge improvement over last season. Matter of fact, there was a play earlier in the game where he ran a double move, right? He used a double move to get open, and it was awesome to see how much space that he created there. And it would have probably been a touchdown if it wasn't overthrown by, I'm pretty sure it was Easton's stick on that play. Quinton Johnson's route running, his separation, and his hands all seem to have made a pretty big leap from what we're seeing in preseason. Of course, it doesn't wipe away a lot of the concern that we have from last season, but I have to tell you, even in plays like this where it was incomplete, it's really hard to walk away from that and say, hey, that isn't a drastic improvement from last year. So we'll keep that in mind. QJ still seems to be looking like he's fighting for wide receiver 3 or 4. That's a good thing at this point because we are seeing improvement, and it's moving in the right direction for QJ. Finally, let's talk a little bit about the defense. The defense continues their dominant tour. Of course, the scoreboard didn't lead to a win this week, but the defense over and over and over again was bailing out this offense, providing really nice field position, and ultimately just out there making plays. It was awesome. And every time the Chargers had an opportunity to do something big, it felt like they did it. That goal line stand was awesome earlier in the game, right? The Rams had a yard to convert, I think, a couple of times this game, and they couldn't do it. The Chargers just kept breaking into the backfield. Guys like Scott Matlock, Tito, were going crazy from the interior this week. Sure, I will say that maybe the pressure did take a step back this week. The edge defenders, Tooley and Morris Brash and these guys, maybe not as crazy as they were last week versus the Seahawks. But you know who did step up? The defensive backs and the linebackers. First off, man, Daiyan Henley looks insane. There's a play where he played the flat beautifully. Probably could have logged an interception had he turned his head just a little bit sooner. But he looks good. Him and Junior Colson are going to make a heck of a duo. But who else was out there? Denzel Perryman was out there this week, and he looked good in coverage too. It was weird. You guys know we've been, Chargers fans a while, and we remember Denzel from back in the day, and it pretty much is known that his coverage ability isn't the best, but he's a thumper. He's good against the run and versus the pass. But it's crazy to see the linebackers stepping up in the way they have, and it feels like a big part of that is probably Navarro Bowman and his style of coaching and the team that Jim Harbaugh has brought together. And then, of course, ultimately Jesse Minter, who has an awesome defensive system on his hands, and he's doing a great job with all of these players. And I don't know, man, every week I just get more hyped about the defense, even though I'm getting more bummed about the quarterback 2 situation. The defense just looks so good and so much for real. And the defensive backs also really help step up in the lack of pressure that we saw this week. I know we still got a sack, but the DBs really did help out. There was this one play that we're seeing here by Talib Still. Absolute crazy coverage by him. He was literally on him. There was nothing the guy could do, and he made a really good play on it. Other guys like Christian Fulton, certainly the next guy that we're going to talk about, and Dean Leonard, really did step up. And then the other guy, Harper, too, right? Harper, one of the backup safeties, he looked really good as well. It does feel like this defense has the capability of picking each other up when one position, wavers, another position steps up. And that's the sign of a really good defense in the NFL. Now, I guess maybe one of the players of the day did come from defense once again this week. Dean Leonard, man. Dean actually had a pretty great week 1 in preseason as well versus the Seahawks, and he doubled down this week versus the Rams, man. He looked awesome. He must have broken up, I'm guessing, 2 or 3 passes, including this interception. He was crazy out there, man. That perimeter spot, there's going to be some competition. We saw Cam Hart out there too. The rookie is kind of easing himself in. But Dean Leonard looks like someone that could realistically be taking snaps in the regular season, man. It looks awesome. Very exciting stuff to think about what the Chargers have been able to build with their defensive back unit, despite maybe a lack of confidence in me and a lot of Chargers fans on the talent early on in the preseason, man. It's been, or in the offseason. A very cool thing to see the Chargers start to accomplish here. Lastly, last couple of notes here. Hello, Tierre Tartt. I wasn't able to find a friggin' picture, unfortunately. Literal brand new member to the team. Just signed a few days before, maybe a day before, got in to this preseason game, and he was out there making crazy plays. Now, he's number 90. I actually didn't know he was playing until a little ways into the game. One of my viewers said, hey, he's number 90 out there, and he's doing great. And I was like, wait, what? Because he wasn't listed on the roster yet. And once we started paying attention to 90, it was really apparent just how good he was doing, man. He was back there constantly. I'm pretty sure he got a tackle for loss or a few of them. He was generating all kinds of pressure. Tierre Tartt, without having pretty much any notice or any time to study the playbook, is out there doing some awesome work, man. And that brings a lot of confidence in me that, honestly, he could end up being a starter for this team. He really could be. Tierre Tartt is awesome. He's only going to improve, and hopefully his work ethic does step up under the Jim Harbaugh leadership and keep him with the team for a while, because that could be a massive steal. From what I saw last night, it looked like he was showing shades of his Tennessee Titans playing days, and that's something that the Chargers really, really need on the roster right now. And again, he's only 26 or 27. He could really become a big part of this defense if he can turn around his work ethic, which I have a lot of confidence in. And lastly, your weekly shout out to Cam Dicker. Cameron Dicker continues to shine. 3, I think, right? 3 of 3 this week. Just absolutely banger, dude. He's automatic, this guy, and we're very lucky to have him on the team. That's going to do it for this week's video, man. Big highlights, I would say. Offensive line looks great. Kamani Vidal looks amazing. The defense continues to step up. Dean Leonard is maybe one of the players, if not the player of the game. There's some good things that we brought out of this week's preseason outing versus the Rams. And despite the loss, I'm feeling better about the team this week than I did last week. And again, for anybody that's worried about the preseason being the ultimate determining factor on whether or not the Chargers will be successful or not, don't feel that way. When Justin Herbert's out there, who, by the way, shedded the boot this week, it's going to look like a completely different offense. The defense is only going to look better when you add Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa Bosa and Derwin James to the mix. There's a lot to be excited about. So we'll see how everything kind of unfolds during the Dallas Cowboys game. I do expect to see more starters next week. It tends to be the week in preseason that a lot of teams ease their starters into the NFL pace or whatever you want to call it. And we'll see how some of that stuff shakes out. But pretty exciting times, man. There's going to be some cool things happening with this team this year, and it's cool to start to see that vision become apparent with every single snap, even in the preseason. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been The Director. If you like what you saw here, hit us up with the like and sub on your way out. We'll see you next time, and as always, bolt up and stay frosty. Let's go, dude. Kamani Vidal could be a sleeper in fantasy over the next couple of seasons.